question here and want to say, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being highest, how important is building a story bank at your organization? Got a 3, we got a 5, a couple 5s. Great to see that. Love hearing how important that is. Okay, so kind of in the 3 to 5 range. That's great. Well, that sets the stage nicely as we move forward here. And I'm going to start us off here by posing this question of, if someone asks, what is your mission? Can you show them? Now, I think for a lot of us, it's really easy to tell people in the form of words, like let's say our mission statement or our values, what our mission is. But how easy is it for you to show the work that you do and what that looks like? And that's what I really want you to keep in mind today during our time together as we go forward here. And I'm going to start us out with this quote: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So, a little background: back in January of this year, I spoke on a panel, and to wrap up the panel, the moderator asked this closing question of us panelists. He said, "What slogan do you live by?" And I said this quote from the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I know a lot of you come from Canada, hockey territory, but my team actually likes to remind me that this is not a Wayne Gretzky quote. This, in fact, came from Michael Scott himself. But regardless of who you believe shared this, well, I love this quote. After the panel, I kind of got to thinking about it, and I wondered, where did this come from? And as I started to trace it back in time, I realized it was tied back to the internship that I had in college at UC Davis. So here I worked for Aggie Pack, which is the largest student spirit-run organization in the United States. And we did all the in-game promotions for our athletic teams. But this is the gold. I worked under the leadership of 3 really incredible humans who encouraged all of us to dream big. And it's still very distinctly ingrained in me. For these three, no idea was too outlandish. So they'd say to us, throw your wildest and creative ideas out there and let's see if we can make them happen, no matter how crazy they might seem. And these 3 really discouraged us from self-limiting our thoughts and from giving ourselves a no, not possible, and talking ourselves out of trying something before we even explored that potential of a yes. And do you know the craziest thing that we did that year that I worked there, or one of the years that I worked there, is we bought a fire truck. And we painted it with our school colors and branded it with our logo. And really, that fire truck almost became like a secondary mascot, where we would drive it onto our team's football field to kick off all the pregame festivities. We would have the sirens going, and we stood on the back of that truck and blasted off tube socks and burritos and t-shirts out of slingshots into crowds of students. And this was something that I was incredibly proud to be a part of. And fun to just dream and actually make something like buying a fire truck a reality. So I am so thankful for those people in my very formative years who encouraged me to dream. Now, you might be wondering, how does this all tie to visual storytelling? And we're about to get there. But before we get into how I applied this concept and this way of thinking in the nonprofit sector, I would love to hear quickly from all of you in the chat. When you hear the term visual storytelling, what does that mean to you? Go ahead and let me know in the chat. What does visual storytelling mean to you? And I'm going to let some of those filter in, and then I will come back to those a little bit later in the presentation. So I landed in the nonprofit world in 2019 at an organization called Farmer Veteran Coalition. And our mission there was to help veterans pursue careers in agriculture. Now, probably like some of you here, I got to write really powerful stories. So these were stories of men and women who had served the US once in defending it, and now they're serving it a second time in feeding their communities. And it was really wonderful to start out this storytelling journey of mine as simply words on paper, so written stories about our members. But after about a year of doing that, I kind of felt like I wanted a little bit different way to tell stories. And that experimentation mindset that I had from my Aggie Pack days started to creep back in. And I thought, what if I dabbled with visual storytelling? And so that next year, a couple of years into my time there, we celebrated our 12-year anniversary as an organization. And we looked back on those 12 years with a whole slew of pictures we had taken over time, kind of a fun walk back through memory lane, but also educating people on our important milestones through each year. And then later that same year, when we awarded our annual grant that we give out to about 100 farmer veterans, instead of announcing the awardees as just a simple listing of names on a web page, like we historically had done, I compiled a slideshow of their faces to kind of show visually what those grantees looked like and what farming they represented. And I did this by going to their websites and pulling pictures from their websites, from their social channels, and turning it into a carousel of images. And I'll tell you that these two visual representations, these photo collections, were definitely a step better in letting our entire community see the people that we were representing with our work, more so than just like a written story would be. But it still wasn't quite to the point of being shared by our community and not in a way that was engaging them in conversation and interaction. They were still really just passive subjects as I went to their websites and pulled these photos. And so I started to think, what if I allowed our community to share their story in their own words or through their own pictures? I'd love to know who of you out there has done this. On a scale, again, we'll do 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. How often would you say that you engage your community with photo and video stories? And I think I can gather from what some of you shared to kick it off as Osamo took us through your trials with storytelling visually, that some of you have tried, some of you want to do it more, and some of you just haven't even given it a chance, and that's fine too. That's all part of this learning process. So yeah, getting some zeros, 2 to 3. Okay, great. Yeah, socials I think are probably the easiest and most common way that I've seen people share, but there's definitely ample opportunity of where you can share those photos, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share with you, as I was back here in 2020 thinking, how can I get our community to engage with us? I'm going to highlight my attempt to do this. This was a couple years ago in 2021 with a set of 3 campaigns that I ran at Farmer Veteran Coalition. And hopefully this shows you a little bit some of my successes that I had and also some of the things I was challenged by in doing this. So the first way that I tried to get our community to participate was for the September 11th. It was actually the 20th anniversary that year, back in 2021, of the 9/11 attacks. And for so many of our members, this was an incredibly pivotal day in their life, in their world. For many of them, it was the reason that they chose to join the military. But for a lot of them who also had already been serving, it absolutely affected the trajectory of their career in the military that day. And so I thought it would be a great way to reflect on how that day impacted them 20 years earlier and now continuing on decades later. So I put out this call to our member asking them to recount what that day meant to them. And I ended up getting 7 videos in return, which made a really wonderful piece, but it was a little bit less than I expected. And the reason why is we had 30,000 members all across the country. And so I was kind of anticipating a little bit more participation, more than just from those same 7 who tended to be the people who always participated with us. And while I absolutely appreciated those 7 who shared very sentimental and personal recounts of that day, I felt personally a little disappointed in falling short of representing our community more widely on the whole. So fast forward to 2 months later in November, Veterans Day was coming up. And rather than our team use that as a day to fundraise, we chose to use this as a day to celebrate our collective members' time of service. And so this is what I envisioned. I thought I could make this really beautiful website page, kind of like a cascade of photos of our members in uniform during their time of service. And what I was hoping is if I could collect 100 photos of our members, which I was really hopeful that I could, that it would make for a really nice collage on a webpage in celebration of Veterans Day. Now, I could have thought back to this 9/11 attempt for story collection and decided right then that our community doesn't really like to engage with these type of requests, or maybe they're too busy to participate, or it's too difficult to get them to share. I effectively could have talked myself out of it before I even tried to ask for photos. But kind of went back to that mindset I had at UC Davis of experimenting and seeing what happens when you just give it a go and not talking yourself out of something before you try it. So I did. I put out an email request and I was totally blown away when 800 photos came back and landed in my inbox. Overwhelmed in the most wonderful and best of ways to get to celebrate so many veterans on Veterans Day, but then also consequently overwhelmed in trying to process so many photos in 2 short days to get them cropped, saved, and built into a web page in time to launch for that holiday. But really, this kind of became my own personal version of that fire truck, something larger than life and totally unexpected. And when I started to think back on what made that ask so successful, I realized that it's because it was so easy, such an easy request. You got to think these members all probably had photos of them in uniform on their phone at their fingertips. And so all they had to do was respond to that email, attach it, and send it off to me. So effectively, I was meeting them where they were. And I think back to what I asked them for September 11th anniversary. And maybe that was a bit overwhelming because they thought they had to share something like a 5-minute soliloquy that really went into this extensive share. But a photo, now that was super easy. Here's the best part though. Hundreds of these people, literal hundreds of them, when they sent their photo to me, said, "Thank you for recognizing us on Veterans Day. Thank you for making this day what it's supposed to be about." So in the end, not only were we able to share this really phenomenal collection and beautiful collection of photos with our entire community, our staff, our donors, our volunteers, but it also was this start to making our members feel seen and heard. And really, isn't that the whole reason that our mission exists? Now, to round out that month, just a few weeks later, Giving Tuesday was approaching, and our team kind of took a different approach this year. We decided rather than ask for money on Giving Tuesday, we decided to use it as a day of gratitude, to share reflections and stories of thanks with our community and our donors in launch of the giving season, knowing that come December, we would be asking many times for money. And so kind of the idea we had around this was to approach those farmer veterans in our community who we awarded grants to throughout the years and ask them to film a short video of themselves on their farm with the piece of farm equipment that the grant purchased for them, behind them, explaining what the grant awarded them, how it made their operations more efficient, and also sharing some quick words of thanks. And I'll tell you, once again, in asking for this, I felt a bit of anxiety around making the request. I kind of felt like I was inconveniencing the members, making a big ask of their time and pulling them away from what I knew was a lot of rigorous farm duties and farm chores that they tended to daily. But once again, what I was overwhelmed by once we did get these videos in and share them with our community was not only the donors' response at getting to hear these stories of impact and how their grant funding was helping farmer veterans. It was also what I heard from the members themselves, who were so enthusiastic to film these videos. So many of them, when I asked them to share, said, "Thank you for the opportunity to say thank you." And really, that became such a wonderful way to elevate their voices. And it reminds me of this great quote from Maya Angelou. "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Clearly, these members had a message that they wanted to share with our community, and we just had to find the right moment and give them the right moment to do it. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to come back to what some of you touched on as examples of what you think of when you think of the term visual storytelling. So I see Sylvie shared images more than words. We've got some videos and photos, impactful images. So yeah, a lot around images, something that you get a feel from by seeing something visual. These are all great and absolutely what I had as my definition of visual storytelling. But I will say my mindset has started to change a little bit as I joined the MemoryFox team in what all visual storytelling could encompass and what it can encompass. So here I am with my colleague Carly that you're seeing in the chat. She and I started a day apart. And when I actually met the MemoryFox team last fall at a conference and they showed me their tool, my jaw totally hit the floor. I had absolutely no idea something like this existed. Gosh, I thought it would have been such a total game changer in my last role had I been able to use it to collect and organize stories. And particularly on that day when those 800 photos landed, and I was just so overwhelmed with what to do with them. So now being a part of this team and getting to work with our nonprofit customers, I have started to realize that visual storytelling goes beyond just what I kind of thought of as a person telling their story or representing their journey in video or photo form. It goes beyond that because the nonprofits that we work with have shown really incredible, innovative, and creative ways to use video and photo to share their mission. And so I've started to realize that storytelling is tied to sharing all the facets of your mission and your organization. It's showing what you do, it's educating people, it's maybe showing your programs and their impact and why it's so important that they can continue. We, as people tied to our organizations, live and breathe our mission every day, but our community doesn't. And so I think it's so easy to fall into this pattern of assuming that people know all the great work that our organization is doing, but often they don't. It's up to us to show them visually what we're doing, showing the impact of our work. And the impact of that work that we can show leads to higher donor retention and better employee satisfaction, which we know are two key components to sustaining our missions. But even more importantly than that, I say it's our job to elevate voices in our community. And what better way than to hand the mic over to the people in our community? Now, this definitely can feel daunting. There's often a lot of questions around how do we do this? How do we display our impact? Who do you collect from? Do you need to interview them? Does it need to be some highly produced piece? And then ultimately, where do you share it? And I think Osama did a great job by setting the stage for us at the start of this call by saying, what do each of you feel most overwhelmed by when it comes to collecting stories from your community? I saw some of you say just not even knowing where to start or how to ask people or just how do you get people to participate and having those stories to sustain you all year long throughout the year. So as we move forward here in our time together today, I want to give you some tangible examples that you might be able to take back to your own team of what some of these storytelling examples can look like. And then ultimately, I'll end with a handful of tips to help set you up for success in your own story collection efforts. So let me know if you're all still with me there in the chat. And I'm going to move forward and talk about how we can grow engagement within our community with our own consumer-generated content. So here are some ways that you can honor your community that we've seen people in our community do. So first of all, educating people. Really great way to share what you do is through community interviews. So maybe you think about spreading awareness of any benefits that your organization offers and sharing these as team member interviews, kind of like short mission explainer videos, rather than simply linking to a web page with text sharing what you do. Videos help give you and your organization a personality and a face. For grants, we've seen a lot of nonprofits show the impact of the grant they've received through sharing their testimony in video form of what it actually allowed them to do, who it allowed them to help, and sharing that back with their grantor so the grantor can see the impact of the funding. We've also lately seen a lot of people have success in taking that same kind of impact video of their grant and actually submitting it as part of a new grant application and securing a new grant as a result. In fact, I've actually been hearing from people lately that some grant reporting are now requiring you to submit video as part of your application or as part of your follow-up to what impact you've made, which is really interesting to hear how much video is becoming more and more a part of grant reporting metrics. Showing your volunteer work in action is a really fantastic way to show your people out in the field. So any volunteer days that you might run, or people who are out in the field doing the hands-on work with the communities that you serve, really great way to collect some stories to then report back to everybody in your community. Events are a great way to highlight, if they're in person, using that moment in person as a way to collect testimonials and photos on the spot at the event from attendees. And if you're hosting a virtual event, this is also a great opportunity to have people take a selfie, send it in, and kind of show the variety of people that are tuning in so they don't feel so much alone, and really represent your community visually that way. For scholarship stories, sharing impact of scholarships is a great way to show either what somebody has done with the money that you awarded them or what they're planning on doing with it. And kind of in that same vein, we've seen a lot of nonprofits who do give out scholarships or grants starting to collect those grant applications in video submissions rather than in paper application form. They found that this has really made their team review process a lot easier for everybody. When we think about program impact, always really powerful to share the testimony of those who participated in programs or volunteers who are running it. This can be a really impactful way to show what you do as kind of like the core of your programming and the people that you support. Certainly, anniversary milestones are a great way to celebrate through video and photo sharing. So recalling any great memories or moments past to celebrate how far you've come, looking back at all that you've accomplished. And same thing on looking forward to where you hope to head in the future. And then, of course, donor communications. Always really great to ask your donors why they give, why your mission is important to them. And then on the flip side, sharing back thank yous with all of them for being a part of your mission. Now, it's important to keep in mind that you're not always going to know what your storylines are and what stories you have to share from your community until you ask. And really, if you're not giving a voice to your community, then are you truly representing them? So I'm going to go in to 3 tangible examples, but before I do that, Osamu thought it would be really helpful for me to briefly show you how our tool works, kind of from a high level, so you have a little base understanding of how these nonprofits that I'll show you next actually collected their community stories. And then I'll go into those 3 examples, and I think it'll be a little bit clearer for all of you to understand. Okay, so from a high level, when we were building the MemoryFox platform, we were hearing 3 common pain points from nonprofits around storytelling. 1, they said collecting content from our community can be like pulling teeth. 2, organizing that content can be even more frustrating and time-consuming. And 3, once we do have that content, we need a more modern and efficient way to then share it back out publicly. So we built MemoryFox on these 3 pain points as our 3 foundational pillars. Collect, organize, and flow is the overview of MemoryFox. And the idea really is to make it as simple for you as an organization to go from step 1, that collection side, to ultimately step 3, the share side. So the first piece of this is the story collection tool. This is what you're going to share with your community, anybody that you want to collect story from. And these are intentionally made to be branded, guided campaigns, very intentionally barrier-free. So there's no app your community has to download, no password or login credential that they have to create. It's just simply a URL that's generated for you for each campaign and a QR code that you would send to your community that then directs them to a web page. And this is accessible from tablet, mobile, desktop, all the different types of devices. So I zoomed in here so you can see a little bit how this story collection tool works. And you are totally welcome to take your phone, scan that QR code right there if you want to follow along on your own device. You can even submit a piece of content when we get to that step. We always encourage pet photos as a great way to share. And I can show you how those load on the back end. Or if not, I'm going to put all the screen shares up here as well, so you can just follow along on the screen with me. But the idea is you're creating these campaigns. Once you direct your community to the campaign, they're going to land on this homepage here that's branded with your logo at the top. So very intentionally made to look like an extension of your website. And you're going to give them the background of why you're collecting story, why it's so important to get these stories from your community, and ultimately what it's going to be able to allow you to do. And as they move forward, there's just a couple of quick housekeeping screens here. So one, you can collect any user demographic data that's important for you to know about the storyteller submitting the content. You can have as many or as few fields as you'd like, and they can be either optional or required. And the next is any consent language that you legally need your storyteller to agree to then be able to publicly share back out their story. And once they get through those screens, then we come to the fun stuff. So this is really all about what do you want your community to share with you. Now, in this case, we're showing you an example here of one of our customers, Reese Across America, that we repurposed one of their real campaigns kind of as this sample campaign. And what they do is they have this national day every year in December, where volunteers all across the United States go to cemeteries and they lay wreaths at the headstones of fallen soldiers in commemoration. And so they were trying to get volunteers around that day to share stories about what is a memory that you have from any loved ones that you're honoring today, or share with us a quick video or photo that you took from the experience. And lastly, in 60 seconds or less, tell us why you choose to participate in Wreath Day this year. And what's really great is when you click in to share one of these stories, it's going to carry over that same prompt language to the top of the record screen. So your storyteller isn't forgetting what you've asked them to share about, but you're also giving them the space to do it in their own privacy, which is ultimately going to get you a really good user-generated piece of content. And so right here in this screen, they can record. They can re-record as many times as they need to get their testimonial just right. Or if they already have a video that they've recorded on their phone or a photo that they've taken previously, they can just click that upload button at the bottom right there and upload that existing piece of content from their device. And then lastly, once they get to this last screen here, it's a blank box that allows them to add any sort of caption, especially when we think about photographs. It's a really great way to paint some color commentary on what's happening in the photo. And they click submit, they're going to get the piece of confetti letting them know that they successfully submitted this piece of content. And from here, they can continue, go back to maybe one of the other prompts that they might want to share with you. Or if they're done with sharing, then they would click that learn more button. And this is where you as an organization would get to close a loop on their journey and decide where on your webpage you want to direct them back to. Now, very straightforward, very simple. Once all of that content is submitted, it's going to filter into your backend dashboard here, or a story bank, as we like to refer to it. And this is where you as admins would have access to all that content coming in. It's all going to be organized and categorized at the point of capture. But there are additional ways that you can kind of give it your own internal organizational tags. So let's say some photos come in that you think would be really great ones to use for this year's annual report. You don't want to forget about them. You just tag them with the report annual report, and it saves that for the future. Same thing if you love one that comes in for a great newsletter feature down the road, or a holiday share, or maybe your year-end appeal. Tag them with that tag, and then that way you think about it in the moment when they come in. And then 5 months later, once it's time to actually build those materials, you just come into your story bank, search for that tag, and it's going to populate all the content you've predetermined as being really great features for those materials. So lots of different ways to drill down into the content from an organizational standpoint, but it's great that we collected the content. Even better that we have a really streamlined way to systematically organize it. But what good is that going to do us if we can't then publicly share back out that content with our community? So we have 3 ways built into the platform that you can work with the content, aside from just downloading it to your own device, which you can absolutely do, downloading the high quality content straight to your device to work with it where you want to work with it. But if you want to use it within MemoryFox, the first thing we have is what we call our story pages. It's just a really simple website builder tool that would allow you to pull in a collection of photos or videos into a public facing web page that you can then share through a URL link. You can also embed that same page directly into your website. I see this question here from Karen. Can you also request photos versus videos? Yes, great question. So within each campaign that you build, you get to choose what type of content you want to allow your storytellers to share with you. So maybe for one particular campaign that you're trying to get them to answer a question verbally, you only want to prompt them with a video option, and you would just then select video as the only type of media they can submit. But if you want to allow them to do both videos and photos, then you could check all those boxes. So it's totally up to you what you want to choose, and each campaign and each call to action within the campaign gives you that flexibility. So let's see, we have our story pages. We have secondarily our video editor that we just launched this summer. And that's just a really great way to not only trim any fat that you have on individual videos that come in, but to take a collection of video clips and build them into one, almost like a reel where you're threading several videos together to then share a larger piece with your community. And then the third thing we have that our customers absolutely love is a Canva integration. Let me know in the chat who uses Canva here. I know lots of nonprofits have gravitated towards it for all their marketing and design needs. And what's really fantastic is it's just a simple one-time link that you do between your MemoryFox account and Canva's the goat, love it. Between your MemoryFox account and your Canva account. And what it's going to do then is pull in all of the content that you collect in Canva straight into your that you collect in MemoryFox straight into your Canva account. So there's no need to have to download those videos and re-upload them one at a time. It just pulls it all in, and then you can go on your merry way and use them in whatever materials that you design in Canva. I am going to, let's see if any photos came in from the community here. Let me see if I can get this out of presenter mode and just kind of show you how this Canva integration works. Okay, so you'll see here, I have our MemoryFox account synced. I'm going to come to our demo account here. And okay, so this was the most recent photo that typically populates, but we do see that somebody here submitted this adorable, I don't know if it's a llama or an alpaca, but I love it. And so that's exactly how it works. Somebody from your community shares a photo and it just populates both at the top of your MemoryFox story bank on the back end and also pulls it straight into Canva. Oh my gosh, and it's even a video. How fun is this? I love it. Awesome. Okay. Let me get back to where we were here. Oops. Got a little bit out of sync here, just a minute. Okay, so that is kind of the overview of the flow of MemoryFox. And so what I want to do now is come back into, now that you understand a little bit about how the tool works, I want to come back in and show you some of these examples that our customers have done to give you a little bit of context of maybe like what you can do at your own organization to, sorry about that, to collect stories in a similar fashion. Okay, so the first example I'm going to show you is that campaign I was just giving in the example walkthrough that Wreaths Across America built. And this is tied to that day that I was sharing every December when they have volunteers all across the country place wreaths at headstones of fallen service members. Now, this is a really high volume event for them in terms of participation. Their reach is very widespread because people are doing this all across the US in multiple cities across the US. And so they get a ton of content that is shared to social media. And the photos and the videos, as you can see, are incredibly powerful, but there's no way they could really capture those all. It would be too difficult for them to go one by one through social media and download them. And they couldn't bring them into their collection without having a very centralized collection system. And so they used our story collection tool so that no matter where people were, they could submit their photos very easily. And last December, from their event alone, they got over 6,000 pieces of content from just that one day that they now have used in their marketing materials throughout this entire year. They also pull that content straight into their Canva account, making it really easy to work with on their design materials. I can't imagine having to download and upload 6,000 photos into your Canva account. So that sync is incredible for them. And the way that they did this is they sent out instructions to volunteers. Like in the week ahead of the event, they sent out some instructions sharing like what kind of clothing they might want to wear, what they can expect for the day, and also prompted them by saying, we're going to ask for your stories after the fact. So make sure you capture photos and videos in the moment of your action happening. And then after the event was over, they followed up with an email that pasted in the link to the campaign and asked them to share any photos or videos they collected. So really great way to highlight any volunteer days that you might have or on-site events that you run. Second campaign I'm going to highlight here is the Community Foundation Martin St. Lucie. And what they do is they provide scholarships to eligible high school students. And they turn some of their most compelling responses into a community story with a collection of scholarship recipients. Now, this was impactful because then they were able to share that story with their partner who funds the program and any other interested stakeholders to show them the impact of what their dollars did. Really important way to be able to have their students share in their own voices. And then lastly, the Urban League of Seattle. Back a couple of years ago at the start of COVID, they created an educational video to share with their community that they serve. And what they did is they asked kids in their community, kind of middle school aged children who had questions around either the virus or the vaccine, to film themselves asking their question. And then they took those videos and they presented them to doctors in their community who answered the questions on video, sharing their knowledge. And then ultimately, the Urban League wove all those questions and answers together and produced a YouTube video that they then shared far, far and wide to educate their community all at once. This one I love. I think it's a really creative way to incorporate that visual storytelling and community voices into a piece that educates the people they serve. They could have just as easily typed up questions and answers as a text document, but really it became more powerful to hear it spoken directly by a community member and to see the people that they represent visually. So as much as you all can capture real-time footage and capture the why behind people tied to your mission, the more you're going to be able to share and the more you're going to uplift your community. So showing people's participation is what helps your organization grow your army of supporters. And it's the stories that are what attract people to your mission. But the key is giving people a way to share authentically their experiences with you, telling those diverse stories from different community members to elevate your mission's voices. This is how you start to build your story bank over time. But you've got to be willing to put in the energy and the space to give people the chance to tell their stories. Because again, stories are more than just one person sharing their journey. They serve many purposes. They're memory aids, instruction manuals, and moral compasses. So lastly, how do we do this? In our last minutes together here, I want to explore the question that I'm sure many of you are thinking. How do we get people to participate? If you want to show this impact over time, you've really got to start to curate this bank of stories for your social proof. But if you don't find ways to systematize this, then the opportunity to capture those moments get lost and the collection effort can feel incredibly overwhelming. I have been there. So on this next slide, I'm going to spill some of our best secrets on how to do this. And my hope is that for all of you, it gives you some tactics that you'll be able to put into place in your own work and take back to your own teams. So let me quickly run through these because I know we're starting to get low on time here. Telling a diverse story, when you think about what you want to share, consider all the viewpoints in your community. Sharing multiple voices and multiple angles helps paint the full picture. And being authentic in your voice, this is one of the biggest things to keep in mind. Somebody's share does not have to be a big produced piece. The more raw, in fact, the better, because that's what's going to make your content relatable to your audience, and it's what builds trust. Simplify your ask. Make it short, simple, and specific. Don't make your ask overwhelming. So it can be as simple as prompting your community to fill in a statement saying, this mission is important to me because ... or I give to XYZ because. Start your community off with this prompt and let them fill in the rest. You'll be really amazed at what some people can share when you ask them something as simple as this one-liner. And as much as you can include a sample video in your ask, then people are going to see exactly what you're asking for them to share, and they can see themselves in the reflection. Keep your ask short. People don't want to share long things, and we don't want to consume long content. It's okay for somebody to share something in just 10 to 20 seconds as a great starting point. Bake your asks into your existing touch points. So think about where your community is most engaged with you, where they're active and most likely to participate, where you're already collecting content. And rather than trying to come up with new systems and build new habits, talk to other departments, see what they're doing tomorrow, next month, down the line this year, and build your asks into those existing touch points. Real-time capture, really in the moment when action is happening, is going to be when your community is most primed to participate. So think about planting a tree, for example. Not everybody's the best at recalling the emotion of an event after the fact, but when you can see somebody digging a hole with the sweat dripping down their face as they plant the tree, that's really going to show you the mission in action real time, and the more authentic it's going to feel to your audience. Multiple touch points is one that I have to remind myself of frequently. A lot of times people need another reminder before they take action. It's really easy to catch people when they're busy, distracted, doing something else, and they forget. And so if people don't respond the first time in the moment, get them to just ask them a second time, and it's likely they may participate. A couple things not everybody can do, but if you can designate a point person to kind of act as a volunteer or an ambassador on your behalf, that goes a long way in connecting with your community and getting people to share. And if you can incentivize with either gift certificates or swag, again, not everybody can do this, but the more you can incentivize, the more participation you might see. And then ultimately, I really like to think of showing impact, your full circle impact with those who shared with you. Come back to them after the fact. Show them the social media post where you shared their story, or the newsletter feature where it was highlighted. This is going to create that full circle buy-in. So in the future, when you ask them to share again, they'll be more likely to say yes because they know what it looks like. And even sharing it with people who opted not to participate might help them realize how simple it is to participate. So ultimately, this all comes to me saying, I now want to ask you, now that we've walked through these steps together and you've seen some examples, how can you tell your own community stories? What examples here maybe have parallels in your own work that can inspire some of your own visual storytelling? But even more than that, what would making an impact in your community and giving them a voice and making them feel seen and heard look like? What would it do for those that you serve? So my hope is that you'll walk away from this session giving this some thought this afternoon, tomorrow, even as the month continues and on into the giving season. And lastly, I just want to remind you all that it's okay to fail. Failure doesn't mean stop trying. Really, it's an invitation to try again. I love this quote that our founder, Chris Miano, shared last year on a podcast. He said, "Failure is learning how to complete the mission. Things that go wrong help you get to the right answer." And I think back to the campaign where I only got those 7 videos on September 11th. And if I had given up on that, I would have talked myself out of going on to recognize and celebrate 800 faces from our community who then all ultimately felt seen, heard, and appreciated on Veterans Day. So I hope you all go onward to experiment with collecting stories in your own community. And I hope you too have your own wonderful fire truck moment. So thanks again for being here. I'm going to share my contact info as I turn it back over to Osamu, and just welcome you all to connect with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. You can email me if you have questions. And I know certainly you have your own ideas around stories that you might want to tell and collect, maybe your goals for storytelling, or certainly any challenges you're facing. So we are always, as a team, happy to help talk through these with you. What you can do, just scan this QR code that's up here. And this will allow you to book time with any of our storytelling experts to talk through your processes and kind of do a deep dive on your goals and the product itself. And also scan this code because it takes you to a really great visual storytelling kit that Carly's pulled together, which is a whole collection of freebies, resources, and articles. So thanks again to you all. Thanks, Osamu, for letting me be a part of this community. And I will go ahead and stop my share.
Hey, thank you, Natalie. That was great, fantastic presentation. I really love the application that you guys developed. Yeah, especially like that kind of like three-step to share your story part is as you know me being a web designer and UX designer. It's really you guys really did a great job on streamlining the process. So let's do some question time here, like. I'm sure you have some questions. Yeah, like you can put on chat box or you can, go ahead, unmute and then, speak up. Anybody? Now I no, because I have some question my note.
Go for it.
All right. So because at the beginning, I asked you guys that what's the biggest challenge, and then some of saying that not enough time to finding individuals who can actually provide the stories. I think that covers that in my view. What about like some organization? It's lots of clients are really not comfortable to speak out. Do you have any tips for that? Like I hear from other nonprofit organizations too.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two pieces to that. Sometimes people aren't comfortable to speak out just because they're not used to it. And so that's when I would advise starting with that really low barrier ask, kind of like I alluded to in the photo collage I was able to do. So what's something that would be very minimal for them to participate? Maybe it is just sharing a photo, and that helps them like prime them towards maybe working up towards doing a video share later. So that's one half of the equation. The other side is I know there's some organizations that work with people that really need to be aware of any privacy or kind of keep confidentiality around the people that they work with. And
Yeah.
so that's a different story. And we've actually been getting this question a lot is how do you still show the impact of your work when you can't have people sharing on screen because we need to keep their identities confidential? And it's something
Mm.
our team has been brainstorming a lot. But one idea I recently heard around it that I love is there's an organization that works with at-risk youth. And one of the programs they do is I don't know if it's weekly or monthly, but very regularly have these kids involved in art projects. And so what they did as a way to still show their program impact is they actually filmed video of the kids' hands doing the art project. And so they showed them and kind of like the reward that they got in participating, but it was just kind of showing the work in action with a shot of their hands. And that way it still got to let people see the work real time through video share, kind of gave them a feeling as they saw these videos, but it still worked to preserve and protect those kids' identities. So I think there's a lot of ways to get creative. And it's something, again, that I've started to give a lot of thought to. We're actually hosting a webinar ourselves in December around trauma-informed storytelling and ethical storytelling, and how do you tell those stories when it's really hard to represent them through a face. So if you want to join us on that, you can come to our website. There's I think the registration link, or I think Carly's getting it ready today, actually. But
Mm.
this is something we're thinking a lot about is how do we still show the impact? And so we're always happy, again, to strategize that with you, because I know a lot of times it's kind of an individual case by case basis, depending on who your clientele is.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I know that time is getting close, but the one last question, Lily actually posted here. So they're trying to get the government and industry to do as much as they can to mitigate the climate change. So she's worried about that. Their stories are most about disaster and fighting the wildfire. These are not positive stories. So will this scare our audience and turn them off rather than get them to act?
Yeah, and I think there's different advice out there in the nonprofit world about, like, sometimes, yes, you do need to paint the picture to show how real the need is so that people feel compelled to join your organization, whether that's as a volunteer or a donor. But other people say, like, really, you want to inspire people with hope and you want to focus on the stories with a positive lens. And I think there's truth to both of them, that you do need to paint a little bit of like the need, and you can't do that unless you're sharing why it is so dire, so to speak, in some of these examples that you're mentioning here, Lily. But I think there's ways to really approach it and put a positive spin on it. So maybe you get experts in your community to share like tips that the everyday person can do to help fight some of these disasters. And that's a way to help make them aware of what's happening, but also get them to share it in a positive way that encourages people to act and take charge, and not kind of showing the, the horror of what's happening.
Right. Thank you. Right. So thank you so much. And unfortunately, we have to wrap this things up. So I'll let you know about the next meeting. It's always at the second Wednesday of the month. So next speaker is going to be Zephy from, they're providing online fundraising platform. The company is in Montreal. So I'll let you guys know. And then Natalie, thank you so much. And then I'll send you all the wrap up. I recorded this video and I edited for that presentation part and send it to you guys. I send it to who, also people who couldn't make it today. Yeah, thanks, Natalie. And then, yeah, I hope you come back next time too.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me here, Osama. Really great to spend an hour with all of you. Thanks for encouraging me to be a part of this community.
All right, thanks, Natalie. I'll talk to you later. Stay in touch.
Take care.
Okay, bye, everyone. Thank you very much.